we're not an enemy of the church. I think we just want an equal stake to Jamaica, like everyone else.
For churches who are oftentimes responsible for creating this type of safe space for community members, how do you share the view rather that church has become an unsafe space for LGBTQ plus community?
I don't think it was ever a safe space, and it's still not a safe space, in my opinion.
I move away from the notion of the church as a monolithic thing. So in other words, in the same way that the LGBT community is diverse, churches are diverse. And so there are a few churches in Jamaica, and they're growing, that provide those spaces. So I think it's really the opposite. There are more churches that are becoming safer spaces for members of the community. But I think we have to kind of step away from this church versus the gays dichotomy. There are LGBT people of faith, which is why we have an event for that section of our own community. There are LGBT people who believe in God and who worship and believe in the salvation of Christ, Renee among them. And so I think it's acknowledging that it might take a longer time for different persons within the faith community to get there, and some will never get there, and that's their own personal business. The church is its own private entity, but more and more, there are more churches that are preaching different types of theology and ministry, and kudos to the ones that are, and to the ones that aren't. For me, the door is always open to have further conversation, to get them to understand that we are not here to attack the church, to dismantle the church. We're not an enemy of the church. I think we just want an equal stake to Jamaica, like everyone else.
Do you believe that some churches' backlash against the community perhaps will help to fuel violence and hate and, other forms of societal rejection?
I mean, the church is very influential. And sorry to say it like that, but the church is very influential, right? I mean, many of us grew up in churches. Many of us, as I said, are of faith. And many of us hold pastors to high esteem. If you think about the push by the government now to kind of get more and more churches involved in vaccination drive, we recognize the power of the churches. If you look at government, many government activities start with a church service. And so the church has a pride of place within our society. And so when you have a position that opposes the existence and the free will of members of society, it does signal to some that it is okay to discriminate, that it is okay to kick out members of your family, that it is okay to cut off members of your family, that it is okay to say harmful things because they're going to hell, for example. And that's a part of the challenge. So it's kind of getting us to a place where even if the church, that some churches don't necessarily see LGBT people as congruent with their own theology, but at least recognize their right to be